In sales, is it possible for you to freeze time? This is an important question. I'm coming to you live for HVAC Technician Sales Secrets on a perfect day to talk about sales and a perfect day to talk about you. So here's the thing. I got this friend, Dr. Erick Knowles, retired from University of Arkansas, dealt with a lot of reactance and resistance in messages and sales, and he has this thing called the 759-501 technique. And it's all about freezing time. But before we begin, I want to make sure to remind you, please do the right thing for your buyer. There's no reason to make anything up. You can use these strategies for good. Please don't use them for bad. So here is how you use this technique. If you want to really compartmentalize time and freeze it, you start with the phrase "before we begin," because it denotes we haven't started yet. So people are like, wait, we haven't started yet? What's the time? Where's the time at on this? Okay, so the phrase is "before we begin." So let's say that you're sitting down and you're going over your door approach with your client, or you're at the thermostat. Sitting down, going over it with the thermostat, you can literally use this phrase. Before we begin, I have a few things that I got to go over with you. You're compartmentalizing time. They say, hey, I've got a couple of questions. Well, before we begin with those questions, I've got a couple of things that I got to go over with you, right? It really does help keep you in the loop of making sure that you're doing the right thing. You're like, so before we begin, you've got one thing to do from here. Go to HVACTechSecrets.com and subscribe, and I'll send you the goods that are not on the YouTube channel and not in the Facebook group. So now that we're done, let's get back to the video. Okay, Scott, well, if that freezes time in the beginning, what freezes time in the end? Well, that's a good question. Now that we're done, right? We're always looking to complete. We're always looking like, how can I be done with this? I want to freeze time. So we've got before we begin, now that we're done. So how many times can you use this on a sales call? You could use it about 3 before the brain starts seeing a pattern of what's going on. If it's about 90 minutes. So here's what I would do. Door approach, before we begin, got a couple things to go over with you. Now that we're done, I'm gonna go grab my tools and I'm gonna move on. So you could come into the middle of the call, and hey, before I go over a couple things with you, would it be all right if I ask for a glass of water? Now that we're done taking a relaxing couple of minutes, I'm gonna get back to work, okay? So you bring somebody out to the equipment. Before we begin, I got a couple things to go over with you. Now that we're done. So those two phrases, before we begin, now that we're done, is a way for you to freeze time. There you go. You got one thing to do from here, just one thing. Find the subscribe button, click on it, and every time I send out a video, you'll get an update that says HVAC Tech Secrets, send out a fantastic video. You should check it out, which you should.